Hi guys, it's Kelly Taylor here and I'm back with another video for Picket Studios. Today I'm going to be using this little cutie, and this is a sea turtle's journey. I'm using the stamps and dies, and then I'm also using this fabulous foiling toner card front. I've never used these before until today. I have to say, big fan, but you get like two of each and they're all black toner. And these are the type of foil, here you can see this is my test piece, that you will use with a laminator. So in addition to that, I am also using the flat gold fabulous toner foil from Picket Fence, and we're going to do some ink blending. So like I said, I had not used this before, and I have to tell you, it takes ink really, really well. So the reason I did my test piece is because I wanted to make sure that if I did the ink blending before I did my foiling, it wouldn't mess up the foiling aspects of it. And it didn't. I didn't have any issues with my test piece. So here I've chosen some blues that are more on the teal side. I'm using Salty Ocean, Mermaid Lagoon, Uncharted Mariner, and Black Soot. And I was really, really impressed with, because typically I will tell you, like, using blending brushes puts down a lighter layer of ink. And these are, I mean, the life-changing blending brushes. I've used them several times before on regular cardstock. And I don't know what kind of cardstock these are printed on, but it takes the ink so well, and it's so easy to kind of blend them. So I actually was talking to a friend and actually stopped to show her like how well it was working. I was like, dude, this is like after one, because I always do my ink blending twice. If you watch my videos, you know that. So I was like, this is after just like one go through, not even two. I was really surprised at how well it blended, and I was surprised at the concentration of color that I could get. I did still do it twice because old habits die hard, but nonetheless, it worked really well. So we'll be using these more in the future, I think. If you are a person who doesn't have a toner printer, these kind of card fronts are great because it gives you lots of options, for you to be able to foil them on your own. And so this one has like this little swirl of fish, which I thought would be fantastic for my little turtle to be kind of like swimming over top of this little school of fish. And it worked really well. The foil, Picket Fence has a bunch of different colors. I chose to go with the gold because we are going to be doing no line coloring today. And I tried to, I don't want to say it's super realistic. I don't think it's super realistic, but I think it's more on the realism side than the cartoon side. And we're going to talk about how we get there. But because of that, there are some browns in my turtle, more muted colors than maybe I would typically use. So I thought the gold would work nicely with that. So now we're getting all the way back out to the salty ocean. I'm leaving that lighter area in the center. And then I didn't do anything else to the background. I've let my laminator preheat. I'm going to get my foil. I've trimmed it down already to cover my whole card front. And then I'm going to put both of those, my card base, or card front, I should say, my card front and my foil into the carrier sheet with the shiny side down. Sorry. And then I'm going to run it through. Now, you guys know I believe in being 100% transparent, and the first time that I did it, it did not come out perfectly. And I'm not really sure what I did wrong, being honest. I know it wasn't the card front, and I know it wasn't the foil, because this did not happen in my test piece. So the only thing I can think of is maybe I didn't let my laminator heat up enough. But fret not. I'm just going to cut a second piece and do it again. And this, then the second time, it did completely foil everything, all of the toner fish that are printed on here. And I didn't have any further issues. So yes, it did require me to use 2 pieces of foil versus 1. However, I didn't have to redo my whole background, and that was a win for me. So just sharing what my experience was with it. And again, this isn't a expensive laminator or anything like that. I've used it in the past with other types of toner products and also not had an issue. So I'm thinking maybe I just jumped the gun and didn't wait long enough for it to get warm. So here I'm peeling off the foil. This time you can see that I didn't have any issues at all there. All of the fish are covered now. And then I'm going to do just a few extra things to the background. And part of this is me experimenting, because I've never used them before. So the first thing I did was, because I'm using Distress ink, oftentimes, Distress ink reacts with water and you can kind of bleach out the background. So I did just some spatters of clean water in the background. I will tell you it did bleach the spots, but until it dried, it was a little bit raised, and the bleach spots are not as prominent as I have seen on other cardstock. Then I went in, and this is a combination of a little bit of liquid pearls, a little bit of water, and a little bit of I think it's liquid gold, liquid paper spatter from Picket Fence. So now let's move on to the stamping. You may have noticed from the title of the video, we're talking about bold outline. You can see how much ink is here. But the trick to being able to color bolder lined images is stamping in a color. So I chose Salvage Patina because this was the closest that I could get to the color of the turtle that I wanted it to be. Also, I'm using my Olo markers today. And so these are markers that I'm not necessarily as comfortable with the color combinations. So whether it's the hex chart, which I do have, Sandy Allnock makes that, or the chart that you get in your box that Olo sends you when you buy them, I did sit down and kind of pick out my colors. So let's talk about the very first thing you need to do when you're when you are trying to no line color. And this is true not even just of more bold outline images. We want to do some mapping. So when you're stamped down and you have all of this detail that's already put into the image, it can make it more difficult to see where the color should go. So right out the gate, before I do anything else, I'm going to map in all of the details that I want to keep. So you can see that there's like some sketchier lines in the shell. There's some dots that are on his little are they flippers or are they fins? I think they're flippers. On his little flippers. So I wanted to keep the dots on his head. I definitely, didn't want to lose the detail of his eye. Wanted to keep all the dots on his little, flippers, legs, feet, whatever, arms, legs, whatever we're calling them. And so those things are the things that I started with first. And I went in, and I'm going to be honest with you, I got super into concentrating on what I was doing. And so I not always really good about telling or showing what color I'm using. So I will try to remember to tell you as we're going through. This is what I started with, which was my darkest blue-green. And this one is the BG 2.7. Now, the BG family, that's like the 0.4, 0.7, those matched my background papers almost perfectly. So I chose to do some teals that were a bit more green. This is also going to work really well for that brown that I'm going to need to put in the shell. So I used a green heavy teal. Then I used regular greens, some yellow greens, and also, you're going to think I'm a little bit crazy, but for my brown, I actually used yellows. So once I get all my little colors mapped out with the darkest color, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to start adding shading, and I'm going to add the shading like I normally would, which is, where 2 points meet. So where his little flippers are coming out from his shell, that's going to be darker. Where his flippers are bent back, the underneath of there is going to be darker. Where his neck is below the top of his head will be darker. So where one object sits on top of the other, or where 2 points meet, is typically where you're going to have your shading. In order to stick with the feel, like that sketchier kind of feel that the stamp has, I did go in with a darker color and add not just shading to my spots, like so where I wanted my spots to be darker, I added more shading. And this is with a G 1.8. But I also added more dots. So like using stippling as shading. And stippling is just a series of little dots. So I kept them nice and small, but this is also going to help blend those colors and add shading that is more of a gradual effect. And then from the G 1.8, I went to a YG 8.7, which is a pretty desaturated green. But I already knew that that was going to be the case, that this wasn't going to be super bright, just because of the colors that, you know, sea turtles are. So let's talk about these Olo markers for a second here, because there's a couple of really cool things that Picket Fence has been doing lately. So one of them is Olo already has all of their colors mapped out. I don't know if you guys know this, but they're not all released. So they are doing their next release. And it's another 32 colors. You can either, you know, the whole marker, the half marker, you guys know how it rolls. I believe the deal over on Picket Fences for half markers. But they're actually doing a pre-order with a discount. With a 15% discount, which is awesome if you know that this is something that you're building your collection up. Let's go back to the card. So here, again, now we're moving on to the shell. We need to map. So we don't want to lose the areas that we know that we want to color. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my lightest color. This is a BG 2.1, and I'm coloring in between the areas of the shell. So you can see that they're very white while the rest of it is, you know, very blue-green, the lines in between. And this is going to separate them so that I can then go in and start adding my darker shading, and everything is not going to be super blobby. There's a lot of sketch lines in this stamp, or these styles of stamps, which honestly, if you don't want a no line color, if you want a regular color, these type of stamps make it easier to color because it has all of the shading and the shadows already put in for you. So you don't have to worry about it. But if you want to get more out of them and you want to kind of, maybe you're working on expanding your coloring, then, you know, doing no line coloring or learning how to do that is a great place to start. However, I understand no line coloring is very challenging. And if we stamped a stamp like this in a no line ink, it would be very challenging to color because you wouldn't be able to see very many of the lines since there's so much detail in it. But stamping it in a similar color still allows you to see all of the lines, you know, because they're there in a color. And then you can color on top of it for this no line look without having to go through, you know, the struggle of not being able to see the lines. This is something that I've used not just with these style of stamps where, you know, you have a thicker, bolder outline and more shadows, but I've used this if I just want to do really fast no line coloring. I will stamp you know, a flower. Let's say I want to color a pink flower. I'll stamp in pink, knowing that I'll be able to blend my colors into that pink. Or you can do it where you stamp on pink paper, pink ink on pink paper, and then you would, you know, be able to add your shadows from there, and it's a much faster way to get a no-line look. I have a video on that somewhere too. Probably been a while. I could probably revisit that. But anywho, so once I go in, I've added my browns, which is a Y 8.7 and a Y 8.6. Now that the browns are down, I then went in back to those same greens that we used on the Turtles flippers and used the G 1.8 and then blended that out with a YG 8.7. The last color that I'll use for the smaller ones to fill them in is going to be a YG 8.5. And I'm not going to completely fill in the bigger portions of his shell, but just the smaller portions. And then from here, I'm going to be honest, like, you could absolutely leave it like this, but I kept wanting to get kind of more dimension and more variety out of it, and so I just started playing around. there is nothing wrong with the way that this image looks once you add those greens. It's great. I really had to I really had to kind of police myself, quite honestly, because I was like, this doesn't need to be crazy. The only thing that I think I probably would have done if I had left it like this was I would have made the shell a little bit darker, and I will do that in just a little bit. I'm going in, what you just saw me do there was add in some more of that BG 2.3, and now I'm going over everything with the BG 2.1 to just kind of blend it all together, because I still want that blue-green feel. Now, I'm not done. Like I said, I keep going back and revisiting it, adding some variety with a lighter yellow, helping those pieces to maybe be a little bit brighter, bring in more like a variety of color, because you do tend to see that, in real life a little bit more often. But for the most part, with just me adding a couple little things here and there, the coloring is basically done. So, anywho, we were talking about, so you could get the newest release, the pre-order, which is shipping at the end of April, beginning of May. So that's coming up, right? For the new Olo release at a discount. They also were doing this thing, and I can't remember if they did it in the last release, but I know they're doing it in this release, and I love it because I think it's a great idea. They're offering bundles. So let's say you watch this, or you've seen some of my teammates' cards, which are all fantastic, and you're like, oh my gosh, I really love that sea turtle. I want to buy the sea turtle, and I want to buy the die. Which we all know, things stack up. This craft is not necessarily cheap, but they're offering a bundle with the stamp and the die at 10% off. When their release is coming out. So that's still available over on the website. I think it's a fantastic deal. Because if you're a person who would have bought them anyway, then you get the bundle and you can save some money. You know what I'm saying? So anywho, I just wanted to make mention of that. You guys know I'm always looking to save $1. So once all the coloring was done, I did go back in with that original blue-green that we mapped with, and I put down some extra shading where I wanted it to be the darkest. Sometimes going over things with your lighter colors, because alcohol markers are transparent, can lighten them up a little too much. So you may need to go back in and put your darks back in. So how adorable is this guy? He's so cute. And we're not going to leave that white border, don't you worry. But so I tested him to make sure that I was happy that his colors, I was happy with the background. And then I went in with a white gel pen and just added some highlights. You certainly don't have to do this. This is just something that I thought would be kind of fun to do. Or you could add it like stippling with a series of dots. I did it more like little sketchy lines. And then in order to tie in those gold fish, I am going to do some little strokes and little dots of gold on my turtle's shell with a thicker version of that mixture that I told you about earlier. This just has much less water in it. So really it's mostly like the liquid gold and then the gold perfect pearls kind of mixed together. And this is just going to help tie them together. So, this card, actually, I have plans for this card because I think it's a really great image for maybe something more masculine. I mean, I think it's great anyway, but, I know a lot of us struggle with more masculine cards. Here, I'm just matching my background. And what I'm doing is I'm holding it there. I'm being very careful not to color on my background. But once I have the colors kind of mapped out where it needs to be light and where it's going to be dark, I will then move it off my project and finish coloring my outline. So I told you guys before, this was several months ago, that my nephew wants to be a dentist. And I can't remember. Did we decide if it was called a DAT or if it was called a DAT? I can't remember. But he passed it. And so, like, all of his undergraduate work is done. And now he just found out that he was accepted. He was looking at a school in South Carolina, actually ended up settling on one in Tennessee, which is actually, my sister lived there for 25 years. So Tennessee is where he was born. So he is going to go back, it looks like probably end of July, for his schooling, and it's going to be very, very rigorous. I mean, some of these semesters he's talking to me about like 36 credit hours. Like, that's crazy to me. But anywho, here, I just wanted to test out some different orientations and see what I liked. I did end up with the landscape orientation that I originally thought, but I really do think any of these would work. Then I trimmed it down. I took my darkest color and went around the edges just to make sure I didn't have any white edges showing. And then here I'm trying it on some brushed gold. It doesn't look bad, but I wasn't 100% in love with it. So I decided that I was going to heat emboss the sentiment in both white and gold to make sure that I would be able to kind of play with them and see which one I liked. So anywho, my nephew called me, was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago, to tell me that he got into this school and he was going to have to move and all about it. And he knows that it's going to be a lot of work, but he's super excited and I'm so proud of him. It's just a long, it's a long road for him, but I do think that it will be worth it. He's shadowed with a couple of different dentists. Like, he's pretty sure that about this is what he wants to do. So I just thought that this little wishing you the best on your journey with this cute little sea turtle was more on the masculine side and would be really cute to give him at his kind of going away party later this summer. So here what I'm doing is I want my sentiment to blend into my background as well. And so in order to do that, I have to use the same colors that I did. So ultimately, Uncharted Mariner ends up being on top. And you can see I just used a damp cloth to just wipe off the excess. But I had to do all the other colors underneath it to make sure that it would match. So I did that. I cut it out with its coordinating die. I tried the gold with the gold background, and it was just honestly too much gold. So I decided I would try it just on a white, just like a nice white border. And I liked the white border much better. So then I tried the white embossing, and honestly, I'm not sure that I love that white embossing 100%, but I know I like the white border a lot better, so I'm good with that. For the background, I am going to just put this on flat, and then I am going to be using the foam tape to adhere both my turtle and my sentiment. If you have ever seen me use Picket Fence's foam tape before, I will tell you this stuff means business. So when you stick it to your project, like, be sure you're sure, because it's not coming up. Because I like to have a little bit of wiggle room for my placement. After I put my pieces on and then peel off the release paper, I like to put a little liquid adhesive right onto the foam. This allows me that little bit of wiggle room before it's completely stuck down, in case I need to move anything. So I've got my little turtle there swimming on top of the little fishies. And then for the sentiment, it overlaps his flipper just a little bit, so I did put a little bit of glue there. I made sure not to put foam tape there, so that way that little wishing part will just overhang it a little bit. In order to kind of accent the sentiment as well as fill in some of the more empty areas, I am using some gemstones. This is, I think it's called Sands of Time. I'm gonna double check for you, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It is, and they're like a more like golden champagne-y kind of color. They work really nicely with it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add just a little bit of shimmer to my actual turtle, to just kind of finish him off. I think he's totally adorable. I'm really happy with the way that he came out. I hope that you guys learned a little something, maybe are inspired to kind of tackle some no-line coloring, or just some general color combinations that you can use. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.